opinion. Together we can.
Now, my next guest is a real-life madman, not just because of his travel schedule, but he's responsible for, well, one of the most prestigious brands in advertising. I want to welcome Saatchi and Saatchi's worldwide chief executive, Kevin Roberts. Roberts just wrote a new book called The Lovemarks Effect, Winning the Consumer Revolution. Kevin, good to have you with us on Bloomberg.
Great to be here.
What is this about lovemarks? I mean, we know about trademarks, you register those, but lovemarks, this is about you've got to get the consumer not just to admire your products and services, they got to fall in love with them?
I thought brands were dying. In fact, I thought they were dead, right, and had been commodified. And we're talking about depression, and it's also sad, and we're just hearing that people are being bored to death and all this kind of stuff. Consumers are going, listen, I understand that shampoos get your hair soft, and I'm just realizing I'm talking about shampoos with you.
That's okay.
But, you know,
between the two of us, we have about a half a head of hair. That's okay.
Right. So let's move on to moisturizers. No, that's not going to work either. But we know that, that beer tastes good and makes you feel sort of lubricated, and that soft drinks get you up and all this kind of stuff. We know that. But it's not enough, is it? We want more than that. We want our brands, because life's tough, because life's insecure, because we're all sort of worried. What's the role of a brand now? Consumers are saying, listen, okay, we got all this functional stuff, we got the benefits, we got the demos, we got price, we understand that, we got value, we understand that, and how are you going to make my life a little bit better? How are you going to make me a little happier in my tough life? Well, I'll tell you what, you've got to emotionally connect with me. You've got to give me something, even if it's a tiny little thing, to improve my life. So we came up with the idea of, well, respect isn't enough, trust isn't enough. They're vital, they're table stakes though. We've got to trust brands, we've got to rely on them, we've got to count on them, and the brand's got to go further. It's got to make me have an emotional relationship with it because it delivers some happiness and joy for me. So I've got to love it. Not the way you live your country or the way you love your mom or your dad or your dog or your sports team, but there's got to be something emotionally in the transaction. Otherwise, you'll choose something else.
Now, this connects really with something else that you previously described, which is that the reason you got into business, or the reason that you think business has a purpose in the world, is really to make people's lives better.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I was sort of growing up in school and everything like that, Jack Welch was the sort of most successful businessman, and Roberto Goizueta when he was at Coke. And Welch used to say that, look, the role of business is to create shareholder value. And I suspect he still says that, okay? Jeff, I don't know, are you listening? But I think he still says that. And then we had Peter Drucker, who was a guy I studied, and he said the role of business is to create and sustain a customer. They're both right, obviously. But the role of business today, for me, is to make the world a better place for everyone. Because if we don't do that, if we don't create jobs, if we don't create self-esteem, if we don't find a way to narrow the gap you were just talking about between affluence and the lack thereof, the only thing that will do that is capitalism and business. No other ism sort of works because we create jobs, we create momentum, we create choice, we fulfill people's ambitions. So I think that's the role of business. So you'll hear Bob McDonald at Procter talking a lot about being purpose-inspired, benefit-driven. That's what the Toyota Prius is all about, right? Being purpose-inspired and benefit-driven.
Now, I'm not going to feel your skin because I know it's shaved very closely with the Gillette Fusion razor because you've got a pedigree in the industry as a client. You used to end up on the other side of the ad man's pitch.
Right.
What was it like making that transition?
So I came from the dark side, and now I've seen the light. So for 30 years, I grew up with Procter & Gamble, PepsiCo, Gillette, and if you're going to go into the marketing business, I submit that those are three pretty fine companies to go to work with. They're also great companies to learn about yourself in terms of leadership, because all of those three companies are leadership driven. They're leadership cultures. They're about performance. They're about winning. And they're about being the best. Pepsi, Gillette. Pepsi are fighting the cola wars. They're still those are the blokes from Atlanta. They're in the red and white can.
We know all about those from
Atlanta.
They're
still there,
the
right?
Coca-Cola colleagues, yes.
So they're
But you
tough.
did something with, for example, with Pepsi in Canada that was remarkable at the time.
Well, for a period of time, we bought the 7-Up company, and Pepsi and 7-Up combined went past Coca-Cola in the Nielsen results, which was a pretty unusual occurrence, because Coke's a pretty formidable competitor, and And we created an event that people would remember to commemorate that and to prove that being number 2 might have been harder, but we did try harder.
Well, I'm going to get you to tell that now. As part of your progress towards winning the consumer revolution, I want you to tell the story about what you did to celebrate, at the time, Pepsi's dominance in Canada over Coca-Cola. And are you still drinking the Diet Pepsis?
I am.
All right,
7
good.
a day, and it wasn't dominance, right? We'd just gone past them, and it was a long time ago. It was the times of the NAFTA agreement, when we were talking about free trade. And many people in Canada were concerned that in an area of free trade, big America would crush smaller Canada. And we had this big black tie dinner in Toronto, and the president was there, Brian Mulroney, and a bunch of important dignitaries of everyone in Toronto. And the president made this fantastic speech on behalf of free trade, and he asked me to speak. And I spoke about it too. And the point I was making, that actually free trade is the best thing that could happen to a small nation in Canada, because Canadians are feisty and entrepreneurial and fast and flexible, and you care, and big America is just sitting there waiting for you. And I made the point that we'd been competing in the cola wars against pretty entrenched, strong, one of the best companies in the world, Coca-Cola, for a while, and we'd just gone past them in Nielsen, and we'd gone past them because we were tough and we were competitive, and this is what I thought about them. And as I was speaking, they wheeled on a big Coca-Cola vending machine, and it's very red, and it's very white, and you cannot mistake what it is. And so I bent down, and I picked up a submachine gun, and I blew it up.
You blew up the Coca-Cola vending machine.
And it made a statement, and people were hitting the floors, and everything was going on. And my guys went out for 3 months, talking about this crazy guy who was now leaving them, but more to the point that if you had the competitive attitude, of course, Coke came back and, it got kind of hairy out there for a while, which is what you want. Competition, the consumers benefited, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a story that we brought a bit of theatre, a bit of drama, but the point to be made was that small guys with the right attitude can still hurt.
All right. Now, you're still trying to figure out new ways to bring these kinds of concepts and this excitement to consumers. You're just back from a recent trip to Israel. What was the purpose of the trip, and what is your sort of plan?
I went to Israel to celebrate the 25th anniversary of our agency there. We've been there for 25 years, and we have a wonderful agency there. In fact, when I was there, we were just made the #2 agency in Israel in the Creative Awards. But the highlight for me is it's my 3rd trip, and I went to Jerusalem, and I met with President Shimon Peres. And for an hour, the president talked to me about leadership. He talked to me about the role of communication, how to survive, how to prevail, and how to progress. And one of the things he said to me was very interesting. He said, in leadership, what is today controversial is inevitably tomorrow popular.
Sounds a little bit like advertising.
I hope tomorrow comes earlier for us.
Now, one of the most recent ads that Saatchi Saatchi has put together is for T-Mobile. This is the German-based telecoms wireless giant. And you took over Liverpool Street Station in London in order to do this. Can you explain how this idea came into reality?
The role of a mobile phone company today is to be more emotional than just product, price, and plans and things that all sound just the same. People are confused as hell out there by all these promises, right? What you really want a mobile to do is to connect you and enable you to share stuff, because we live in a participation economy. So we had the idea of talking to T-Mobile about, while life is for sharing, and your mobile enables sharing in a way no one's ever done before, because you never leave home without your mobile. You never leave home without your screen. And you've got everything on that. So we had the idea of sharing a dance. And we had the idea of shooting it live in a main station without anybody knowing that we were shooting a commercial. And that's what we did. We took over Liverpool Street Station at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Monday morning. And I sat there with this very, very, very smart German head of marketing. We committed this whole thing. We had 300 dancers going into the station. We're going to stop all the station and shoot this thing with all the normal people there. And we had 60 cameras all set up. No one knew what was going on. And the guy said to me, I hope this is going to work. And I thought, man, so do I. So do I. And he did.
How many Diet Pepsis had you had that morning?
Yeah. Not as many as I needed.
All right. Kevin Roberts, you've also described how new is old and now is the new. Peel the slogan apart for me and explain, what does that mean?
We've been obsessed with the new, and it's new. And I just don't think anything's new now. New media, old media, it's just media. Because we're living now in the age of now. Everything's now. We're always on. It's instant. It's fast. Whatever you think is new, let me tell you, your kids already discovered it 2 months ago. Whatever new technology you're playing with, in China and India, they already know what to do with it. In Silicon Valley, they'll be doing with it for 3 months. So I'm trying to get to people to think of, look, it's about urgency. It's not about new and innovation. It's about being always on and living in the now. Decide now, act now. It's all about execution, in other words, making choice. Boom.
Well, we talk about boom. YouTube, 23 million hits for that T-Mobile advertisement.
Right.
For an advertisement.
Yeah.
How is that going to change the way companies have to give up control of their products and their services?
The very first thing we did was pull the media budget because we just had 23 million people downloading it for nothing, passing it on to your friends. Nowadays, you know, what you ask people about an ad is forget all the research. Just forget all that stuff. Stop wasting your money on that. Just ask people 3 questions. Do you want to see it again? Do you want to pass it on? And do you want to get involved and improve it? And if they say yes, you know, you've got a mass thing. The question on control is really interesting because in the last couple of years, times were pretty tough, right? So what did companies do? They went defensive. They put more controls in. They sort of talked a lot, but they tried to do more with less, and they took control back away from the customer. The consumer's going, forget it. You no longer own your brand, man. We, the people who buy it. Remember what happened to New Coke? America said, no, actually, we quite like the old one, right? So we, the consumer, is in control of the brand. And that's pretty hard for many corporations to give up control, give up brand. They want to monitor the bloggers. They want to control the conversation. Consumers are not going to have that. They say, we've got the information now. We've got the knowledge. Now show us that you're involved and engaged. We're in a participation economy, really, not attention.
So how do you manage that meeting? You know, because when you look at the advertising world and then you look at the decision-making process that goes along with it, there's got to be a meeting that takes place with the chief executive or the head of the ad department, and there's maybe the confrontation because their jobs depend on making sure they keep control rather than giving it up to things like the internet or social media.
Yeah, I mean, I think the news is good now is that most of these people have kids, and the kids are going, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, you know, look at the way I'm living now. And Dad's going home, you know, and he's got his iPhone, you know, and he's got his iPad and all this stuff. So he's sort of playing around the edges. He's not really as ignorant as you might think. His grandma's now Skyping, right? You know, and she knows how to get the internet on the TV too. So it's all around them. So life around them is changing. And I think that we're all finding now people are going, yeah, it's not analog, it's not digital, it's all together. It's and. We're living in a real world, we're living in a virtual world, we're living in a world where TV will be the biggest medium forever. So don't worry, Pam, it's all safe for you.
Well, as long as you continue to be a guest with us.
And our advertisers will continue to spend with you, right? I mean, TV is going to be up 2 percentage points in 2011 versus 2010. Wherever you look, we live now in an age where we've all become screen agers. We've got our mobiles with us all the time. We've got computers. We've got iPads that actually have no functional role whatsoever, but they're so irresistible.
Well, it goes back to that idea of love marks, this
absolutely.
thing that makes you feel a certain way when you handle it, when you use it.
I mean, you just watch retail sales. I mean, I was listening before to the segment. December's going to explode through the iPad. I mean, it's just going to drive traffic everywhere.
Well, it certainly reminds me of the T-Mobile ad you did, because at the very end of the ad, what's the person doing? And that's the only reference to T-Mobile is listening on their mobile.
Life's for sharing.
I want to thank you very much for sharing with us. Kevin Roberts, Chief Executive, Worldwide, Saatchi Saatchi. Thanks very much. Coming